Hey everybody, I'm Greenhavak.
And I'm Cynize.
And this is ESHQ's GG Well Played.
Justice reigns from above. No one can hide from my sight.
Yujin no Ken wo kurare! Die!
Cheers, love! The cavalry's here!
And hey everybody, welcome to GG Well Played. What a week in the Overwatch League. We had crushing victories. We had, huge upsets, and a couple of them. And you know what? Even with all that, the games to watch that we picked were still fantastic.
The week was filled with such amazing games to watch. Some might get pretty close to our games of the week that we chose, but but our games of the week that we did choose really held up to the standards that we set them to. The Gladiators versus Valiant, fantastic game, absolutely wonderful. I loved it.
The battle for LA did not let down at all. We had the Valiant making big play after big play with just top level mechanics and this, a real hunger to it. And then on the flip side, you have the Gladiators just going, okay, well, I didn't like the way that team fight went. I didn't like the way this team fight went. What if we tweak this? What if we move this? How about this? And somehow they turned it into, the micro mechanics they did turned this into a fantastic game. I loved it.
Yeah, their responses were incredible. Absolutely loved how they got together, they did not, overextend. They did not freak out. They stayed calm under pressure.
It was a real spectacle. The Valiant, obviously one of the top Western teams, and the Gladiators are now not quite in the same ballpark, but they are showing that they cannot be underestimated. But how about the second game to watch? The New York Excelsior versus Seoul Dynasty.
Wow, what a match to go into the books. Seriously, these two giants just brawling it out, fighting and hanging on by the skin of their teeth.
Oh.
Wow.
This was a game that, you know what? I will say, I think our predictions were the pros and cons we listed out. For the New York Excelsior being very straightforward, being very aggressive, allowing their mechanical skills to shine to try to win the fight, versus the Seoul Dynasty's adaptability, strategic prowess, and flexibility. And, the game really could have gone either way. But in the end, the New York Excelsior claimed that game with a pretty convincing tiebreaker round. So
yeah, they definitely earned that win, and it really taking down the last undefeated team. It just pure excitement for the drama and the narrative that is being placed in the first stage of the Overwatch League.
Exactly, and we're getting close to the end of stage one. But let's go ahead and see what the results for this week do to the standings at the end of week 3. All right, guys, let's take a look at how the narrative is progressing in the Overwatch League. So we had the San Francisco Shock and the London Spitfires battle it out 3-1 in favor of London. The Shanghai Dragons versus Seoul Dynasty, a repeat of that scoreline, 3-1 to the Seoul Dynasty. And the day wrapped up with the battle for Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Gladiators versus the Los Angeles Valiant, where the Valiant would ultimately claim victory 3-2 on the tiebreaker map. It's an exciting game. It was our game to watch. If you haven't seen it, it is worth going back and checking out the videos. So, Thursday, January 25th, was the Boston Uprising claiming a victory over the London Spitfire. Upset alert, people. The Boston Uprising knocked one of the Korean teams down just a little bit. So, The Philadelphia Fusion, though, would repeat the scoreline versus the New York Excelsior. That is 2 upsets in one day. 2 of these teams, both teams, the Boston Uprising and the Philadelphia Fusion, were considered mid to high teams, kind of, moving around in that pack, not really sure. And both of them got huge wins versus the Korean rosters of the London Spitfires and the New York Excelsior. Houston would steamroll and continue their 4-0 streak versus the Florida Mayhem. Friday, January 26th, Seoul Dynasty and New York Excelsior would clash. Seoul Dynasty were the last undefeated team, but that would come to an end. The Excelsior taking a 3-2 win on the tiebreaker round versus the Seoul Dynasty. The Shanghai Dragons would ultimately take the Philadelphia Fusion to the tiebreaker round, but Philly would prove dominant and they would claim a victory over the Dragons 3-2. The Dallas Fuel finally on the board with a win, a 3-0 win over the San Francisco Shock to wrap up the day. Our final day, Saturday the 27th, the Dallas Fuel fall 3-2 to the Boston Uprising. The Boston Uprising are doing great. You could say they are on the upswing because they're rising. The Valiant would battle the Florida Mayhem and claim a 3-1 victory. The Mayhem looked stronger than the scoreline would depict, and ultimately they did obviously claim a point from the Valiant. Houston is on fire with the longest 4-0 streak in the Overwatch League currently as they brush past the Los Angeles Gladiators 4-0. That is huge. That is huge. So let's go ahead and take a second to look at kind of where the rosters and the score lines are going. So as far as the power, no, we're not to the power rankings yet. I got to hold my horses. I get excited with the power rankings because it's a little concoction of my own. Going to the standings, however. So we have the Seoul Dynasty, the New York Excelsior, the London Spitfire, all tied at 5 wins, 1 loss. Following up are the Houston Outlaws, the Los Angeles Valiant, and the Philadelphia Fusion tied at 4-2. So those are your top teams. Now, normally I only do the top 5, but since there are so many ties, I feel like I had to include them all. Moving down to the bottom of the table, we have the Shanghai Dragons sitting at 0-6 still. The Florida Mayhem are at 1-5, tied with the Dallas Fuel. And then the 9th and 8th spots are taken up by the LA Gladiators and the San Francisco Shock, both at 2-4. So right now, the Boston Uprising are caught in between the middle of a bunch of ties, sitting right in that 7th place spot at 3-3. What does that mean for my own personal power rankings? Now, my power rankings are as followed. I've got the New York Excelsior at the number 1 spot. Followed by the Spitfire and Dynasty with a tied scoreline, and actually the Houston Outlaws and the Fusion with a tied scoreline as well. But if I had to give a nod, currently I would give it to the Philadelphia Fusion solely because of the teams that they've won against. So it's very close in the top 5 teams. The Valiant obviously falling out of the top 5, but will they stay out of the top 5? Only time will tell, obviously. So as far as games to watch in week 4 as we move up, we have on day 2 the Spitfire versus the Dynasty. That is a game to watch. It is the final game of day 2, February 1st. The next game to watch is actually on day 3, that Friday, February 2nd. It is the second game. It is the Dynasty versus the Outlaws. This is going to be a big week because obviously we are coming to the end of stage 1 here soon with only week 5 remaining. So that's the narrative. Those are the scores. That's the ranking. And so yeah, that wraps up my my most recent power rankings, not seeing too much movement, but the Valiant falling out of the top 5, being replaced by the Philadelphia Fusion. For how long? Only time will tell.
That's such a huge jump from last week. I'm pretty impressed with the Fusion, and I hope that they do better in the future as well. Valiant, I mean, what can you say? I mean, week 4 is going to really, they need to do a lot better in week 4. They need to make sure that they're continuing to win and just hang in there.
Yes, very much so. And the other thing the Valiant need to do is the Valiant need to get a convincing win. Being taken to overtime, that's not convincing.
Right.
And dropping a map to the Mayhem, that's not convincing.
That's right.
And so the Valiant need to come out and they need to get a win that says, hey, we belong.
And Excelsior taking the top position over Dynasty and Spitfire. What a change. That's exciting. And London Spitfire Dynasty taking on that second spot. Who's going to be the sole survivor on the second spot? That's going to be pretty fun to watch.
Oh, absolutely. Those 3 teams, I feel like they're really going to be just duking it out. And you know what? Here's a question.
Yep. Okay.
So, who do you think's going to end stage 1 on top?
On top. Excelsior, Dynasty, Spitfire all have a chance of doing it, but you also have Houston Outlaws. Fusion's showing a little bit, little gusto. Valiant's there. They're chopping at the heels. But we only have a couple more weeks. So
what's your way too early prediction? What does your gut say? Who's going to be at the top of our table?
From the looks of the future matches, I'm going to have to go with Dynasty.
Dynasty on top overall?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yep, they have a couple more easy wins and a couple more medium games with not top teams, just in the middle to the lower teams. So there's a couple in there that are pretty strong, but I think Dynasty has the better chance of winning the majority of the rest of their games.
Okay. For me, I'm actually going to go with the end of stage 1 being, by a straw, the New York Excelsior.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because I feel like Seoul Dynasty's played a lot of the more mid-level teams.
Sure.
And I feel like they're about to have a bunch of weeks. I mean, next week they're the Spitfires and the Houston Outlaws in 1 week. I mean, they're going to be playing these kind of weeks. That is rough on anybody, even if you're a top flight team. So,
I mean, I understand that piece, but you also got to think everyone plays everyone, right?
Oh,
so it's who they have left, who they've already beaten, and looking at the past games and the future games, I think that's going to be the Dynasty.
Okay, that's fair. I guess one of the big telling factors is going to be who carries the team. And when it comes to who carries the team, we need to know who the best players are. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at some of the best and standout performers of this week in the Overwatch League. Oh, hey, it's Derek. NASCAB, all you.
Thanks, guys. What's going on once again? Oh, hey, it's Derek. Yes, it is, bringing you the top players of the week for week 3 of the Overwatch League. Now, as we know, there are standout performances in every day of play. So over here on the top players of the week, we like to point out the top players of the first 2 days as well as the final 2 days of any given week. So let's get started. First off, we're going to focus on damage, DPS, and we're going to head over to Houston, the Outlaws, yes indeed, because we're going to be talking about Linkser here today. Now, primarily his Widow performances, but definitely not exclusive to. Linkser is a supremely flexible player when he's playing in any given map. I mean, the performance was so standout, the man was almost named this week's MVP for the entire week. But we'll tell you who that is a little bit later. But for more on Linkser, let's head over to analysis from NASCAB.
Linkser of the Houston Outlaws carried his team to victory against the Florida Mayhem in days 1 and 2, playing 4 different heroes at an extremely high level, racking up a 30 and 6 KD on Widow, a 16 and 8 KD on Tracer, a 3 and 1 KD on Genji, and a 7 and 3 KD on McCree, leading out to his overall score of plus 38 KD, leading him to be our standout DPS of days 1 and 2.
Next off, we're going to look at tanks, and for that, we're going to go to probably my second favorite team in the league, Boston Uprising. Gamsu's performance, primarily as Winston. Now, for lack of a better phrase or pun, I mean, the man goes bananas on the field. That's not a pun. And, I mean, he's in your face and he takes his space. It's ridiculous. I wanted to rhyme. But for more of a closer look on this, let's head over to my good buddy, Nazcab.
Gamsu of the Boston Uprising was critical to the success of his team versus the London Spitfire, leading to their upset victory. He charged his ult 4 times per 10 minutes, constantly creating space for his team and opening up pick opportunities on their back line, leading him to be our outstanding tank of days 1 and 2.
And finally, we're going to talk about supports. This one's a little tough for me. I'm going to say it through clenched teeth, but we're going to go to Philadelphia Fusion, specifically in their performance against my favorite team, the New York Excelsior, you know, when they beat them. For that, we're going to look at Neptuno. Boy, thanks for your Mercy performance. Okay, look, quite the guardian angel out there, really saving his team. Okay, he was pretty clutch at ults, I would say, and really made for some really good setups. I'm gonna go cool down, but while I do, let's go to Nazcab.
Neptuno of Philadelphia Fusion was a key player in their upset against New York Excelsior, having high impact ultimates on both Lucio and Mercy, allowing his DPS to carry. This guy doesn't have a crazy stat line, but he did exactly what his team needed to win, which makes him our standout support of days 1 and 2.
And that'll do it for the first 2 days of week 3. Let's focus on the second half of week 3. Starting us off, we're going to focus on damage, and for that we're going to go to New York, to my favorite team, New York Excelsior! So, for damage, we're going to be focusing on Sabiolbi and primarily his tracer work. Now, when it comes to his performance, the man is a 1v1 king. Nay, maybe even a god. See, the man, he's not only is he in that position, but he also was super versatile, proving that he could be a flex tank. But for more focus on this amazing player, let's go over to Nazcab for a closer look.
Sabiolbi pulled off crazy 1v1s during the Seoul Dynasty versus New York Excelsior game, racking up a plus 22 KD in 1v1 scenarios, with an overall KD of plus 38, leading him to be our outstanding DPS of days 3 and 4.
All right, and next off, let's go to tanks. 1 second. My hair's probably messed up now. We're going to go to the Dallas Fuel. I know, whoa, who would have thought that? And for that, we're going to look at Mickey. They're so fine, right? And specifically their Roadhog performance. Now, the Dallas Fuel, needed a win. They were desperate for a win, and Mickey came through with his Roadhog performance, specifically throughout the entire set, getting a super high hook percentage, 59% if we want to be specific. That's more Nazcab's job. In fact, for some more specifics, let's go to him to highlight Mickey's awesome performance in week 3.
Mickey was a key tank player during the San Francisco Shock game for his team, the Dallas Fuel. He had a 64% hook accuracy on Ilios and a 59% hook accuracy overall. Not in the 65% club, but close. He had also had 8 whole hog kills and a plus 27 KD overall as hog, leading him to be our outstanding tank of days 3 and 4.
And finally, for the final 2 days of week 3, we're going to look at support. And for that, we're going to go to Boston Uprising once again. And this time it's going to be Neko. Let's talk about Zenyatta for a second. My goodness, all right. And the big thing to talk about is how when it came to the tiebreaker, the man allowed no mistakes, almost 0 mistakes. All right, he won this game for his team. But for a closer look at our fine friend from Boston Uprising, let's go right on back to Nazcab.
Nico of the Boston Uprising was a major player during the Dallas Fuel series, especially on Temple of Anubis, where he scored 13% of his team's first kills, staggering out his opponents heavily. Overall, he had 6.35 kills per 10, leading him to be our supports of days 3 and 4.
And finally, this is important. I say that every week, but it always is. The MVP of the entire week for week 3. And folks, again this week, we're going to head to Boston Uprising because we're focusing on Dream Casper. Now, we're talking about Dream Casper. We're talking about his major performances throughout the week against two key teams. Two teams that aren't necessarily slouches. One of them being the Dallas Fuel. Now, I know they just got their first victory, but it's just kind of bad times for them. They're not terrible. It's really odd. But they also faced off the London Spitfire. And if you want to talk significant, the man, David Bowie would be proud because this man worked under pressure in both situations and stood tall, all right? Come on. Is Dream Casper the top in the league? I don't know. I'm just asking questions, okay? But it is a valid question to ask. Now, for more on his amazing performance, let's go right back over to NASCAB. Close us out.
Dream Casper, the Boston Uprising, is a shoo-in this week for standout DPS of days 1 and 2. But after his performances on days 3 and 4, we just had to give him the MVP. 19% of his first kills as Genji versus a Spitfire. 27% of his first kills as Pharah versus a Spitfire. 17 total first kills. Only 7 first deaths. This guy's creating the picks necessary to create that upset versus the London Spitfire and make sure his team wins against the Dallas Fuel, making him the obvious choice for MVP of Week 3.
And that's it for us over here at the Top Players of the Week. For myself, oh hey, it's Derek. Yes, it is. As well as my good buddy NASCAB. Right back to you guys.
Thanks, guys. You know, Dream Casper getting the MVP makes sense.
It does.
It just really, it's 2 + 2 equals Dream Casper. Mm-hmm. That's how much this makes sense this week that he takes it. But I gotta say, right on his heels for me was Linkser. The way he played his Widowmaker.
Oh my goodness.
Just the amount of support and plays that he provided. They were so crucial to taking those points, making sure they got the objectives. Linkser was absolutely flawless. Absolutely.
The big thing for me with Linkser's performance is it was a game where he needed and should play that way.
Right.
It was a game where they really deserved a 4-0 win, and that's what he did. Mm-hmm. He went, you know what? We deserve a 4-0 win. I'm going to give a 4-0 performance.
That's right.
And that's what you need to see out of these players against every team. And because when you start to see, you guys start to get that little confidence. So I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see what Linkser does in next week because he's going up against Fleta.
He's going to need another 4-0, outcome when he's going against the Dynasty. He needs to be on the same level as well as Jake.
Yes.
They need to be in tune. We need Muma to be up there as well. There's just.
And I will say, I think
there's so many.
I think if the Outlaws played like they did in Week 2, and Linkser plays the way he played in Week 3, I think they can give Seoul Dynasty a run for their money.
That's right.
But some big plays have to be made, and that's exactly what we're going to be taking a look at is how to do and how to create some big plays, if I understand, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right. I mean, this next segment is all about plays that you can actually do while you're playing with your friends. These are simple strategies that you can take and improve your game.
All right. Well, I'm excited because, I actually used your last week tip in a game. It was a King's Row. We hopped up to the second point while the payload was pushed, and we won that game very easily. So getting those staggers, it makes such a difference. So I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. All you, buddy.
Hey guys, welcome to the play breakdown. I'm pretty excited about this one. This is kind of like a build-up to the last week's play breakdown. But this one, it's going to be all about the pirate ship. Specifically, the pirate ship in Junkertown. We're going to go to Boston Uprising versus the London Spitfire on Junkertown, the first attack and defense of the map. So hold on to your seats and prepare to learn about this awesome strategy. Let's go into it. There's two parts. You have the objective defense mechanism. You have Orisa, Bastion, the anti-dive, right? They're on the objective. They're making sure that no one else can get close. Bastion, they see any divers coming in, they're shooting them down, making sure they're destroying everything in their path. You got the Orisa shield or a Reinhardt shield to make sure that they're protecting the Bastion. You have the anti-dive, a Diva, a Junkrat, anything that can make sure that if a Diva comes in, a Tracer comes in, another Junkrat, they make sure that close range flankers don't get near. Even Mei. Mei is also a key component where she can block off side alleys, make sure that it limits the defenders who are attacking the pirate ship. They only have basically one or two directions to attack. Then the other key component to the pirate ship is the snipers. You have the long range damage dealers that make sure that they're taking out any extra tanks, anyone who's just a fool enough to stay still for more than a second. They are a key component to this, making sure they're adding that extra DPS, kind of flanking around, making sure that the defense isn't setting up to defend against this objective from moving forward any longer. Now you can interchange different characters, but the concept of this pirate ship is making sure you have the shield, the Bastion. Sometimes you can put a Tor, but the Bastion right now is just better. And then you have an anti-dive, and then you have the snipers or the people who have the long-range barrages. Now, one of the key things I want to do here is make sure that you know how to counter this. If you see it being played against you, or if you're lucky enough to have a couple of characters who are good to counter this, then you'll know how. One of the key things is to get the Bastion off the objective. If you can dethrone the Bastion, that's going to be key. You got Junkrat, you have Diva, you have Tracer, you have Genji. All of these players can deal a massive amount of damage to Bastion or get him off the point. If you have an Orisa, you want to focus on getting her right click right next to the shield and moving that Bastion. You want to move that Bastion. That is your key. Because once you get rid of that Bastion, once you get rid of their defensive position on the moving ship, then they will not, it is so difficult to get back on there.
Oh, I like that.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it is a common one we've seen in the professional league with, just the pirate ship. We've seen that very common on Junkertown. But really, what goes into the pirate ship? How can you get rid of it? It's pretty interesting.
No, I like it because it gives a kind of a different look and vibe into kind of a well-known strategy.
Right.
I like to talk about why it doesn't work on some of the other maps as well, and how you can still set it up, but it really does need to be a little bit more of like a surprise. You got to catch your enemy off guard. If they see it coming,
they can counter it instantly. Getting right up on that objective and not letting you get to it and not have you set up, it's over.
Exactly. So for me, I like that a lot. You know what? As far as tips go, because that's a good gameplay tip, let's go ahead and go into our E Factor tip of the week. This week we're going to be talking about macros and understanding how there's a level of play where the default controls are easy to learn, but maybe not optimized for top-end play.
Ooh.
So, as an example, Zenyatta, one of the ways I like to personally play with him is I have my mouse wheel as my Harmony and Discord orbs. So, up on the mouse wheel is to heal my teammates.
Right.
Down on the mouse wheel is to Discord an enemy target. And this allows me to not have to move my left hand around, and I can keep my character moving while quickly throwing in my own heals in between my volleys and my primary fire. Another easy one to do is for Lucio, changing your boop, the knockback, to your spacebar and changing jump to your right click. Since it's so important for Lucio to be moving around the map and jumping a lot, it's a lot easier to spam your right click than it is your spacebar. So little things like this to play around as far as your own key bindings with characters to optimize your combos, your setups, your reaction times, things like that can really be the difference between big plays, big victories, and, well, dropping more SR. So, couple other things to consider. This one's not necessarily a macro, but understanding key combinations, like for Mercy as an example. I always hold down right click all the time because you're damage boosting constantly. And then if you toggle onto your left click, you can actually keep your right click held down, but it will switch to healing. And when you let go of the left click, you'll go right back to your damage boost to really allow for that split-second decision making.
So really, it's less time between switching to skills, less time between your finger and actually activating the skill. That is the key. Whatever's fastest and whatever you can work with, that is what you need to change it to. A lot of people have their melee hit to the thumb button on their mouse.
Exactly.
So when they're done with their primary fire, they go and click that thumb for that little bash and get some extra damage in there.
If you've ever wondered how tracers can do their dash and thwack, or the Genji can really get that triple star, Genji blade, melee combo, this is how they're doing it. They have their keys set up in a way where they don't need to move their hands and their buttons around. They have them set to macros that allow for this to roll off the thumb, if you will.
That's right. And really, Blizzard easily makes it easy for all the players to do this. Every single character has their own key bindings. So you can easily go in, change each one without affecting other characters.
And so that's the E factor for this week. And I love playing around with my crosshair. I hope they add a little more customization, but you can have some fun still.
I'm definitely in agreement there. Maybe not as big and as crazy as Counter-Strike Go can be, where they can just add whatever they want in there.
I feel like I need my smiley face. Is that too much?
Maybe
to
a crosshair going across the entire screen. I don't know, right?
So I can aim like it's like a computer grid.
Right. Yeah.
It can be like Vader in the trenches. I get we get the little circles around targets.
They did that for a reason, right?
Maybe it works. But we have some news for you. We had a player fined. That's right. Prophet of the London Spitfires picked up a $1,000 fine for flicking off the crowd. Essentially, he gestured with his middle finger to the personal camera that sits on the top of the monitor, and it happened to be on the main screen at the time. Now, I hear it's an accident, but you also know a little more about this side of the story. So
yeah, that's right. He released a letter to the community saying that he was sorry. He explained that he was kind of being, joked around with his team and his coaches because they could see him, and they kind of have all the monitors and everything on their players. And he jokingly, made that gesture to them without really thinking about how it was being streamed. So he did definitely release the letter apologizing, and it was a very good professional letter. So I'm kind of really happy that he was able to be mature enough to release such a wonderful kind of I'm sorry. So he did definitely show the level of maturity after the fact that professionals in this sport should show.
Okay, I like that, and I think $1,000 fines about where that should be. It's a first offense. It's, I mean, clearly wasn't with malice or, you know,
Right.
so I'm fine with that. The other bit of news we have is the roster reload time is here.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It started on January 22nd, the open market, if you will, where teams are allowed to sign new players. To any unsigned player can be picked up by a team, and they can become active February 21st. So that can be big for some of these teams, especially some of the teams like, you know, the Florida Mayhem 6-man roster.
Seriously.
They've shown that they have a decent core, but it needs some flexibility, needs some moving parts.
Right. I mean, London Spitfire has shown us that changing out players is key to this game. We've seen it do wonderful things for teams, and they really need to add a little extra players to their team.
And I 100% agree. And the Shanghai Dragons, they kind of got to see what's weak in their roster, what they need to be adding, and I mean there are some decent players, especially from the Challengers China division, that definitely want to see themselves in the Overwatch League. So I guess time will tell who and what new faces we get to see in the Overwatch League moving forward into Stage 2. But that does wrap up our show for this week. Any parting words?
Really, just go out there, try a couple of these strategies that we mentioned, check out your settings, and try to improve your game. And really have fun. Have fun. That's really the key here.
You know what? It is. Keeping a positive head about you can help you win more games than I think people want to give it credit. But everybody, if you like this kind of content, make sure to like and subscribe and join the conversation down in the comments. It's also something we want to do is jump into some more team videos. So if there's a team you want us to dive into first, make sure you let us know. But as far as this week, that's the GG, and keep it well played.